So I'm thinking that I should begin the talk with a little bit of a clarification. Some folks thought the title of the talk was a typo and that it was supposed to be good time and not goo time. Those of you who know me well knew exactly what I was talking about. Goo time is, and this is my own definition, I'm going to send it to Webster, I think, is a non-specified interval, season, extended moment between who we were and who we are to be. It's the release of the caterpillar and the not yet emergence of the butterfly. It's that time of breath, separating the moment our hands touch the block of stone and the final moment when the David has emerged. And it can be a very quiet, internal experience filled with meditation and patience and non-expectant waiting. Or it can be the chaos of a total mess in front of us that suddenly becomes a finished painting, or a home packed for a move, or a perfectly written essay. It's the goo. It's metamorphosis. It's transition without control. Yeah. Okay, so let's try that one on for size. Transition without control, or judgment, or a schedule. For those of you who lean towards the controlling, please know that I'm taking deep breaths with you as I say these words. So what's different about goo time compared to other gestation periods is that word judgment. I don't know many people who would approach a pregnant woman in her 4th or 5th month of pregnancy and say, "Could you please move that along?" I mean, sheesh, really? This is taking an awfully long time. Could you, what's wrong with you? Can you get over it? And yet when we are in moments of great change in our lives, great shifts, deep moments of grief, how often have we heard those encouraging words, "Get over it. Life goes on. You have to move forward." Or my favorite, "How long are you going to be like this?" However, to clarify, there is a difference, and it's a significant difference, between goo time and camping out in the valley of the shadow of death that we know about in Psalm 23. The words of that psalm are, "Though I walk through the valley," which is different from "though I park my camper, put down stakes, and make my home in the valley." That is not goo time. That is a different experience altogether. So let me explain a little bit. In Robert Lawrence Smith's book, A Quaker Book of Wisdom, he wrote this: "Every day of our lives is another journey down the path of truth. We cannot withdraw from the process of living while we make up our minds how to live. All we can do is move forward, guided by whatever inner light we can find to show us the way." To me, that defines the difference between goo time and camping in the valley. Goo time is a process. It's a process of living. It's a process of gently moving forward, even as we're being still, guided by the light to know what comes next. Camping in the valley is giving up. It's withdrawing from the experience, making a valley where we're supposed to be moving through into our real new home. And I'll get back to that in just a minute. What I was really excited about when I started thinking more and more about goo time was that most of our greatest teachers, our spiritual teachers, became who they were in their goo time. So Moses, right? Moses leaves Egypt, he goes out into the desert, he becomes a herder, he gets married, he gets into this really nice settled life where he's very happy. And then one day, he climbs Mount Sinai and meets a burning bush. It can happen to any of us. And he has this goo time with the bush, and it's telling him what he has to do. And he listens, and he does it. And then he ends up back in the same place with hundreds of cranky, hungry people who want to know what's going to happen next. And so where does he go? Back up to Mount Sinai, back to the burning bush for a little bit more goo time, and he gets the 10 challenges. Jesus all of our favorites. He took time in the desert. He went alone from the noise and the chaos and the pressure and the what are you going to do next, what are you going to do next? And he just wanted to sit with God and listen. 40 days he sits, he listens, and he's guided to return to do the work that's in front of him. Muhammad, the founder of Islam, was orphaned as a child, and he grew up with extended family. And he would often leave town and go up to a cave in the mountains for nights at a stretch just to sit, just to be alone, to be in his gu time. And at the age of 40 was when he was visited by Gabriel, and he experienced his first revelation of God. Siddhartha, who's also known as Buddha, usually illustrated sitting under the Bodhi tree. Well, this is because the story was that he sat down at the Bodhi tree and he said he was not going to move until he had found the truth. From what we've learned, after 49 days of meditation, at the age of 35, he attained enlightenment. And in Buddhism teachings, it's said that that moment of awakening was when he discovered what came to be known as the Four Noble Truths, which are the truth of suffering, the truth of the origin of suffering, the truth of the cessation of suffering, and the truth of the path leading to the cessation of suffering, which is the Eightfold Path of Buddhism. And although there are so many more, and even contemporary people like Mandela, who used his prison time as gu time, Gandhi, many others, I'm going to just add one more to the list, and that's my brother Francesco, who would go up to Eremo delle Carceri to get away from Assisi, to get away from the noise, and to get away from the brothers that had assembled to follow him, because oftentimes they were kind of rambunctious and annoying. And he would go up to his cave, and he would sit and he would listen to the rain, and he would cry, and he would sing, and he would pray, and he would commune with God, and he would refill his well. And then he could come down and do the work he had to do. So what am I saying with all of this? I'm saying that being in gu time does not mean there's nothing going on. There's a lot going on. This is a great Rumi quote. And don't think the garden loses its ecstasy in winter. It's quiet, but the roots are down there riotous. There's a lot going on in the gu. And the difference between giving up, camping in the valley, and allowing time, and then the difference between that and allowing time to work on and in us is very important to recognize. And there's scientific evidence of gu time all around us. There are processes in nature that require time and require us to leave them alone. For example, on the TV show Lost. I'm warning you now, there are 6 seasons of this show, and I could do a talk every week on Lost alone. So on Lost, this is Charlie Pace, this is John Locke. And on this show, there's an episode where, well, basically, for those of you who are not up to speed, they crashed on an island. It's mysterious. There's polar bears. There's weird stuff going on. It's very metaphysical. It's very strange. Charlie's character is addicted to heroin, and he is struggling to loose himself from his habit because, let's face it, he crashed on an island. He's going to run out sooner or later. And so he's got this stash, and Locke finds his stash, and Locke is trying to offer him the opportunity to have control of letting go of his habit as opposed to having the habit taken from him. And so he holds Charlie's stash and he says, you can ask me 3 times. On the 3rd time, I'm giving it back to you. And so Charlie comes to him, I think this is the 1st time. And Charlie says, I can't do it. I need my stash. I need it. And John offers him a different perspective. He shows him a cocoon. And he explains that a cocoon is a moth getting ready to emerge. And John describes how this moth is struggling in the cocoon to break free from the tough exterior, and he has to find his way out of a tiny hole. And he says that he could help it. He could widen the hole for the moth to make it easier for the moth to come out. But if he did that, then the moth would be too weak to fly, and it wouldn't survive. It's learning how to live through the effort it takes to finish its time in the cocoon. It's learning how to live by getting stronger and struggling. And it needs to complete that process on its own. Charlie doesn't like what he's going through, clearly. And yet to get to the other side of it, he has to go through it. So I found this quote by Ginny Whitlaw, and I'm putting it up here because I wanted you to connect with it. She's the president for the Institute of Zen Leadership. And her quote is, "Acceptance is always the first light of transformative energy. Acceptance doesn't mean we have to like what we're dealing with. It means we don't get stuck in whether we like it or not. We simply work with it. As soon as acceptance starts working, it opens up the possibility of further transformation." We don't get stuck in whether we like it or not. We simply work with it. I'm just letting that sit. The other aspect of Gu Time that came to me as I thought about it was, it brought photography to mind. Real photography, not digital. And when my friend Jimmy used to work on his photographs, it was a miracle to me. It was a miracle to me that he could put a blank piece of paper into some water and some chemicals, and magically an image would reveal itself. And this process is called developing. See how that works? Isn't that cool? We develop in the dark of the Gu, just like those photographs, slowly revealing, transforming. And playing with this idea of photography, I once heard this really cool expression. Fear is that little dark room where negatives are developed. And this is a different experience from the Gu. To me, this description of fear is what camping in the valley is like. It's not going into the Gu, it's going into the fear. Because there's no fear in the Gu. There's no reason to be afraid in the Gu. It's just Gu. The caterpillar isn't afraid. The baby in the mother's womb isn't afraid. The bird and the egg, the moth, the seed, the flower bud, they're not afraid of where they are. There's no fear. It's just time and process and change. So the darkness of Gu Time to me is not fearful or unpleasant. It's just not knowing. It's the moment before. It's the necessary preparation for what's to come. Mother Teresa said, "There is a light in this world, a healing spirit more powerful than any darkness. We sometimes lose sight of this force when there is suffering, too much pain. Then suddenly the Spirit will emerge through the lives of ordinary people who hear a call and answer it in extraordinary ways." And when I read that quote, it led me to this one from Anais Nin. "And the day came when the risk to remain tight in a bud became more painful than the risk it took to blossom." We do eventually come out of the Gu. We have to. It's part of the process. However, our time in the Gu is essential to how strong we become when we emerge. Rushing it, feeling guilty about it, being teased about it, beating ourselves up about how long we've been in there is not helping us be stronger. Doing all of those things is like pushing the hole bigger in an effort to stop the experience and move it along. When we do that, we run the risk of being too weak to accomplish what we need to do next. And that is when we end up not in the Gu, but in the darkness of a whole different cocoon. And that cocoon is not designed to support our growth. That one is designed to keep us hidden in the dark, in the valley, and not moving through it. Are you seeing the difference? Yes, we're here? Okay, good. I like to check. M.J. Ryan wrote in The Giving Heart, "True generosity follows the pattern of nature. The seed lets go of its identity in order for the tree to sprout. The caterpillar lets go of its old form in order to become a butterfly. For the new to emerge, the old generously lets go of form and identity. It does not try to cling to itself, but graciously gives way. It generously lets go. It graciously gives way. Goo time is not violent or sudden or urgent or forced. It takes patience. It takes time. And this is something that many of us, speaking for myself, wrestle with. Allowing ourselves the time we need to just be in it. It's said that time brings change, and that change takes time. And by giving ourselves this gift of goo time, we are honoring the process of transformation that will happen with our cooperation or not. Personally, I feel if it's going to happen, it's better to yield on this one and allow it to do what it needs to do, instead of wanting that hole to be bigger or fighting against it or giving up. We're going to move into prayer, but I would like to share an offering with you, if you wouldn't mind, because this song has been my teacher about goo time. Rolling river God, little stones are smooth. Only once the water passes through. And so I am a stone, rough and grainy still, trying to reconcile this river's chill. And when I close my eyes and feel you rushing by, I know that time brings change, and change takes time. And when the sunset comes, my prayer would be just one, that you might pick me up and notice that I am just a little smoother in your hand. Sometimes raging wild, sometimes swollen high. Never have I known this river dry. The deepest part of you is where I want to stay, until the sharpest edges wash away. And when I close my eyes and feel you rushing by, I know that time brings change, and change takes time. And when my sunset comes, my prayer would be this one, that you might pick me up and notice that I am just a little smoother in your hand. Rolling river God, little stones are smooth. Only once the water passes through. Taking a deep breath. Connecting into that place that is spirit, that place that is home, that place that is safe, that place that may have darkness, and yet it's a darkness that's comforting. It's a darkness that's closing around us like a warm blanket. That's connecting with spirit. It doesn't have to happen in a building, or it doesn't have to happen through a specific name or a kind of prayer. It happens when we get quiet and we remember the truth of who we are. That we're made of stardust, that we are made of that exploding star and all the pieces that came from spirit. We are that. And we are brought into this life to learn and to live and to grow. We are not born to suffer or to struggle. We are born to be who we are, which is spirit in flesh, which is spirit living itself through us. And so no matter what the appearance is in front of our faces right now, whether it's health issues or financial issues or relationship or career, whatever the categories of prayer are, however things fall into the flow chart of prayer, it doesn't matter. Because the moment our desire was thought, Spirit was already saying, I've got that. I've got it. Hang on. My time. And if that means time in the goo, then we spend time in the goo. And if that means we're ready to come out, then we come out. Because this moment, not the moment just past, this moment is the only moment we have. Each one is cherished and precious. Each one is ours to live. And so I invite each one of us today to consciously put into this stone what we want to wash us smooth. Releasing the stone and allowing the water to say, I've got this. You can let go of it now. Don't carry it anymore. It's weighing you down. Let it go and let things be, breathing, moving, gently and graciously moving forward. Life is unfolding and it's so good. It's so sweet. So I just want to close this prayer with an invitation that if anyone is feeling like they're more in the valley than in the goo, I invite you to just be gentle with yourself. Be gentle with yourself. And guide yourself like you would a trusted friend or a beloved one or a child. Guide yourself from the valley right into the safety of the cocoon, of the goo, right into the safety of the warmth. And love yourself there, and forgive yourself there, and get ready to emerge renewed. So grateful, so grateful. Amen. Ashe.